Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the official courtroom testimony from Day 16 of the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. No one in the courtroom was prepared for what happened next. As the judge called the next witness, a ripple of disbelief swept through the room. All eyes turned toward the back as a towering, familiar figure stepped forward. It wasn't a music executive. It wasn't a former associate. It was Lebron James, one of the most recognizable athletes in the world, a basketball legend, a man who had spent decades building an empire beyond the court, now walking into court under oath ready to reveal something he had kept hidden for years. What he testified would shake the courtroom and the world private training sessions in Diddy's underground facility, ritualistic team-building exercises, where boundaries were crossed, silent contracts, hidden recordings, and a twisted mentorship that LeBron James says he was manipulated into without understanding the true cost. This wasn't about sports, it was about power control and the price of silence. And for the first time, LeBron James was ready to speak the truth about what happened behind closed doors with one of the most powerful men in entertainment. The courtroom didn't move. Not a breath, not a shuffle, just silence. When the judge called the name, it didn't seem real. LeBron James. Even the stenographer paused, fingers hovering over the keys. But within seconds, the back door opened, and in stepped the man himself. No entourage, no designer suits, just LeBron James in a simple navy blazer. Head held high, but eyes carrying a weight that fame couldn't lift. Gone was the confident swagger of a champion. What remained was a man ready to confront his past. He took the stand quietly, adjusted the microphone with hands that had held countless trophies, and for a long moment, he just sat there breathing. The same controlled breathing that had carried him through championship games now steadied him for the most important testimony of his life. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, deliberate. I never thought I'd have to speak about this. Not here, not like this. But silence isn't strength when it protects the wrong people. The prosecutor nodded respectfully. Mr. James, when did you first meet Sean Combs, also known as Diddy? LeBron James looked directly at the jury. 2018, at a charity gala in Miami. He approached me after my speech, said he admired how I used my platform for change. Said he wanted to help me expand that influence beyond basketball. I was honored. I thought I was meeting a mentor. He paused, glancing toward the defense table where Diddy sat motionless. I had no idea I was meeting my handler. LeBron James described their first meeting as intoxicating. Diddy had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room. He talked about legacy, about building something bigger than sports, bigger than music. He painted this vision of us working together to change culture itself. The conversation that night lasted hours. Diddy spoke about his private training facility, a place where he mentored select individuals who were ready to transcend their current limitations. He called it the Elevation Chamber. He said it wasn't just about physical training or business strategy. It was about mental conditioning, about breaking through the psychological barriers that keep successful people from becoming truly powerful. LeBron James's voice grew quieter. He made it sound like enlightenment. 2 weeks later, LeBron James received a handwritten invitation on thick black paper with gold lettering ready to elevate the chamber awaits. Come alone. Come prepared to leave your old self behind. The facility was located in an unmarked building in downtown Los Angeles. No signs, no company logos, just an address and a single black door. When I arrived, there were no other cars in the parking garage, just mine and a black SUV with tinted windows. Diddy met him at the door, personally dressed in all white. "Welcome to your transformation," he said, leading LeBron James through a series of corridors lined with mirrors and motivational quotes. But these weren't typical inspiration posters. They were darker. Power requires sacrifice. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. Trust is the ultimate currency. The deeper we went into the building, the more isolated I felt from the outside world. There were no windows, no cell service, no clocks. It was like entering a different dimension, where normal rules didn't apply. They descended a staircase into what Diddy called the foundation level. Here the walls were painted deep red, and the air was thick with incense. He told me this was where real champions were forged, where the weak were separated from the truly elite. That first session, LeBron James thought was just an introduction. He had no idea it was the beginning of a psychological prison that would take him years to escape. LeBron James's hands gripped the witness stand as he prepared to describe what happened in the foundation level. The courtroom was silent, hanging on every word. Diddy called it ego dissolution therapy. LeBron James began, his voice steady but strained. He said that to reach true greatness, I had to strip away all the false identities I'd built up. The basketball player, the businessman, the public figure. All of it had to go. The process began with what Diddy termed vulnerability exercises. LeBron James was instructed to remove all his jewelry, his expensive clothes, everything that represented his success and status. He handed me a plain white robe and said, "In here, you're not LeBron James the champion. You're just a student learning to become truly powerful." The room itself was designed to disorient. Mirrors covered every surface, but they were angled in ways that distorted reflections. Soft music played from hidden speakers, not relaxing melodies, but repetitive sounds that seemed to burrow into your consciousness. Diddy would circle me as I sat in the center of the room, speaking in this hypnotic voice about breaking down mental barriers. He'd ask me to confess my deepest fears, my most shameful thoughts, my secret insecurities. LeBron James paused, visibly struggling with the memory. At first, I thought it was legitimate therapy. Successful people do work with life coaches, right? But then I noticed the cameras. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Tiny lenses embedded in the mirror frames, recording devices hidden in the decorative elements. Everything I said, every moment of vulnerability was being documented. When LeBron James questioned the recording, Diddy claimed it was for his own benefit, to review his progress and breakthrough moments. He said champions study game film. This is film of your mental game. Trust the process. But the sessions became increasingly invasive. Diddy would bring up personal details that LeBron James had never shared with anyone. Information about his family, his finances, his private relationships. He knew things he shouldn't have known. When I asked how, he just smiled and said, "Real power means having real information." The psychological pressure was subtle, but constant. Diddy would alternate between praise and criticism, making LeBron James feel simultaneously special and inadequate. One moment he'd tell me I was destined for greatness beyond anything I'd imagined. The next he'd point out all my flaws and failures, making me desperate to prove myself worthy of his approval. I started looking forward to the sessions even though they made me uncomfortable. He'd created this artificial sense of dependency, where I felt like I needed his validation to be complete. LeBron James looked directly at the jury. That's when I realized I wasn't being trained. I was being conditioned. The sessions evolved from individual conditioning to what Diddy called collective elevation experiences. LeBron James was introduced to other participants, successful individuals from various industries who had all been through similar processes. There was a tech entrepreneur, a famous chef, a best-selling author, even a prominent politician. All of them had the same look in their eyes, a mixture of ambition and fear. LeBron James described how Diddy had assembled what he called the Inner Circle, a group of high achievers who met monthly for intensive weekend retreats. These retreats took place at a remote compound in the mountains outside Los Angeles. Participants were required to surrender their phones and sign comprehensive non-disclosure agreements. The NDAs weren't just about business confidentiality. They covered everything: the location, the activities, even the fact that the retreats existed. The compound itself was designed like a luxury prison. Beautiful accommodations, gourmet meals, stunning views. But no way to communicate with the outside world, and no freedom to leave until the session ended. Diddy called it digital detox for the elite, but it felt more like isolation and control. The weekend programs followed a strict schedule. Morning meditation sessions where participants were encouraged to release attachment to their public personas. Afternoon workshops on advanced influence techniques and psychological dominance strategies. Evening truth circles where members were pressured to share increasingly personal and compromising information. The truth circles were the worst part, LeBron James testified. Diddy would sit in the center while we formed a circle around him. One by one, we'd have to confess something we'd never told anyone. A secret shame, a hidden fear, a moment of weakness. The group would then process your confession, analyzing how it revealed your psychological limitations. But LeBron James began to notice that the information shared in these circles had a way of coming back up in unexpected contexts. Business deals would fall through for other participants. Personal relationships would mysteriously deteriorate. It was subtle, but there was always a connection to something you'd revealed in the circle. The most disturbing aspect was how Diddy used the group dynamic to increase control. He'd pit us against each other, creating artificial competition and jealousy. He'd give special attention to one person while making others feel excluded. Then he'd rotate the favoritism, keeping everyone desperate for his approval. Participants who tried to reduce their involvement or miss sessions would face consequences. Not direct threats, but things would start going wrong in their lives. Bad publicity would surface. Business partnerships would dissolve. Family members would receive strange phone calls. LeBron James's voice grew harder. Diddy never explicitly took credit, but the message was clear: loyalty was rewarded, and disloyalty had a price. The breaking point for LeBron James came during a retreat in late 2022. Diddy announced that we were ready for the final elevation, a process that would cement our transformation and bind us together permanently. The ritual involved signing what Diddy called soul contracts, documents that went far beyond typical NDAs. These contracts essentially gave Diddy ownership over our public images, our business decisions, even our personal relationships. In exchange, he promised to use his influence to elevate our careers to unprecedented levels. Several participants signed immediately, desperate for Diddy's continued favor. But LeBron James hesitated. Something about the whole thing felt wrong. The secrecy, the manipulation, the way he'd isolated us from our support systems. It wasn't mentorship, it was exploitation. That night, he made a decision that would change everything. I didn't sign the soul contract. LeBron James testified, his voice growing stronger. Instead, I told Diddy I needed time to think about it. He smiled, but I could see the anger in his eyes. He said, "Champions don't hesitate when opportunity knocks. Maybe you're not as ready as I thought." The retreat ended with an uncomfortable tension. Other participants who had signed the contracts looked at LeBron James with a mixture of pity and fear. It was like they were relieved to be fully under his control, because at least then they knew where they stood. When LeBron James returned home, he made a decision that he knew would have consequences. I started documenting everything I could remember about the sessions, the retreats, the contracts. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in cult deprogramming and psychological manipulation. The retaliation was swift and devastating. Within a week, negative stories about LeBron James began appearing in the media. Anonymous sources questioned his leadership abilities, his business acumen, even his athletic legacy. The stories were carefully crafted to sound credible, but they all traced back to information I'd shared in the truth circles. More disturbing were the personal attacks. My family started receiving threatening messages. My business partners were contacted by concerned parties, warning them about my unstable behavior. My children's school received anonymous tips about potential security threats. The psychological warfare was relentless. Diddy would call me at all hours, sometimes speaking normally, sometimes in that hypnotic voice he used during sessions. He'd say things like, "You're making a mistake, champion. The circle protects its own, but it also punishes betrayal." The most chilling incident occurred when LeBron James found a package outside his home. Inside was a collection of photos from the private sessions, images of him in vulnerable moments, recordings of his most personal confessions, and a note that simply read, "Champions don't quit the team." That's when I realized this wasn't just about control. It was about ownership. Diddy believed he owned pieces of everyone who had been through his process. Our secrets, our vulnerabilities, our very identities belonged to him. But instead of backing down, LeBron James made another crucial decision. I reached out to other former participants, people who had left the inner circle or been pushed out. I discovered I wasn't alone. There were dozens of us all carrying similar trauma, all afraid to speak out because of what Diddy might do. Together, they began building a case. We shared our experiences, compared notes, and realized the extent of the manipulation and abuse. It wasn't just psychological. There were financial crimes, blackmail, even evidence of human trafficking related to the recruitment process. The final straw came when one of the former participants, a young entrepreneur, attempted suicide after years of harassment and psychological torture. That's when I knew I had to come forward regardless of the personal cost. This wasn't just about my own trauma anymore. It was about stopping a predator who was destroying lives. LeBron James's voice carried a new strength as he delivered his final testimony. Coming forward wasn't just about seeking justice. It was about reclaiming my own identity. For years, I'd been living with this shadow over me, this fear that my secrets could be weaponized against me at any moment. He described the process of breaking free from Diddy's psychological control as similar to recovering from an addiction. You don't realize how deep the conditioning goes until you start trying to think independently again. I had to relearn how to trust my own judgment, my own instincts. The support from other survivors had been crucial. We formed our own circle, not for manipulation or control, but for healing and accountability. We helped each other recognize the patterns of abuse and develop strategies for recovery. LeBron James acknowledged that speaking out had come at a significant personal cost. I've lost business opportunities, faced intense scrutiny, and had to explain to my children why their father was involved in something so dark. But he emphasized that the alternative, continued silence, was no longer acceptable. Diddy preys on successful people because we have the most to lose. We're invested in our reputations, our careers, our public images. He exploits that investment, using our own success against us. LeBron James looked directly at Diddy for the first time during his testimony. But success built on fear and manipulation isn't real success. It's just an elaborate prison. He spoke about the broader implications of the case. This isn't just about one man's crimes. It's about a culture that allows powerful people to exploit others with impunity. It's about the way we worship success without questioning the methods used to achieve it. LeBron James's final words carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. I spent my career learning how to win games, how to build teams, how to achieve greatness on the court. But I had to learn the hard way that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting them. Real leadership isn't about control. It's about empowerment. As he prepared to step down from the witness stand, LeBron James offered a message to other potential victims. If you're trapped in a situation like this, know that you're not alone. The shame you feel isn't yours to carry. It belongs to the person who manipulated you. And the power they claim to have over you is an illusion. The truth will set you free. But first, it will probably piss off the right people. The judge called for recess, but the courtroom remained silent for several moments after LeBron James stood up. His testimony had been more than just evidence in a criminal case. It had been a masterclass in courage, a demonstration of what it looks like when someone chooses truth over comfort, justice over self-preservation. As he walked past the defense table, Diddy finally looked up, meeting LeBron James's eyes for the first time during the testimony. The exchange lasted only seconds, but it spoke volumes. The predator and his former prey, the manipulator and the survivor, the past and the future. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with their cameras and questions. But for the first time in years, LeBron James wasn't afraid of what they might ask. He had already told the hardest truth of all. The world would now have to decide what to do with that truth. But for LeBron James, the decision had already been made. He was finally free.